Yeah. Yo.
Is that better?
What's
Well,
good?
I need to lower this.
no,
like,
that's
so
it.
early.
So you got to be pretty close with these mics. You got to be literally like
Hello.
Like I'm performing at the Queen's Jubilee.
maybe like a hand width away at
Yeah,
the
okay.
most.
Hello then.
Okay.
Right on.
Whoa. Okay.
All right, we're recording. This is already recording.
What's happening?
You know,
Yeah.
right? It's already recording. So.
Everybody, including over there, welcome, Robbie
What's up, babe?
Verhagen. Oh, good. Thanks, Lily. Lily's just playing with her sock. Aaron's getting involved. Okay.
Walnut tree.
Well done. Thanks for joining us, Robbie, at the
my pleasure.
Launchpad Writers Club. We got Hope, the second ever member of Launchpad, I believe.
Is that
Yeah,
because
I
you're
was
the
the second.
first?
No, Aidan
No,
was
Aidan
the
was
first.
the first.
Oh, cool.
Aidan signed up sight unseen.
That's a big commitment.
He did. He got the flyer and bought a membership online.
Right on.
Never been
I
here.
bought mine the day of.
You bought yours
had
at
to
the
came
open
here
day.
first.
Yeah, I
though.
bought mine
You
on
bought
that
your-
open day.
At the earliest possible opportunity to buy one with having seen the place.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good.
I really admire sight unseen. How many points did he get for that?
You know, I never awarded points.
No, but
Seriously?
I think there were like 51 points in there, which weren't for anything. So that can be for that.
Oh,
He is
okay.
on my team. He's in the Sly Dogs. So, you know, I'm going to rig it so we win. You guys realise
Yeah, I
that, right?
realised.
Well, when is the announcement of
Oh,
the winner?
sorry, it's
Oh.
been rigged that Layman Claw has lost. 'Cause
Why?
Tissue's not.
That's because I got a plastic bottle on my team.
Because
That's why.
Layman Claw started with negative
No, but Tissue's not.
999,000 points. So you got a bit of a
Wow.
of
Yeah.
catching up to
Yeah.
do.
That's what
Yeah.
Tissue's not did to you.
I don't want to ask what Tissue's not did to accrue that much debt.
We've already
What's up? No, I'm good, thank you.
your teammate,
Yeah.
your
He can stay
house,
over there.
He was reincarnated every week.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, well, every time we finish a bottle of mineral water. Lily, could you get tissue snot?
It's a very healthy entrant, actually. Does it warrant any explaining as to why it's called
Should we
tissue snot?
explain?
Do you want the tissue
Do we don't even know why
No.
Tissue Snot
Do
is.
you want the tissue snot that will become tissue snot after you recycle it?
Hey, do we want to see if we can actually knock off that tissue snot and then make a new tissue snot by the end of the night?
Yeah, I can do that easy.
Oh,
Just
sorry.
bring me the
I can
bottle.
drink a bottle of mineral water
Yeah,
in 20
same.
minutes, so let's do it.
Yeah,
Alright,
let's do
let's
this.
do
Let's
this.
do this.
Alright,
Let's
let's
do
create-
this.
Yeah, Lily, you're
We
getting
need a
some
cup. We need cups.
And this will be tissue snot in a week.
Good.
Thank you. Could
can
you
we
get
go-
A week?
3
20 minutes?
No, more like 20 minutes.
Could you
Easy.
please get 3 mugs from the kitchen?
Please?
Thank you.
Okay, let's do this.
So when she's not been a serial killer, she's
Yeah.
pretty helpful.
Or a serial mandarin eater.
Whoa, I forgot
What?
that this chair went backwards.
What was that comment?
Can I ask a serious author question to our author guest?
Yo,
So that's actually going to happen tonight now, is it?
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a real one.
I do it. I'm like the person.
All right, roll. Go for it. Go for it.
Okay, you do that. I'll ask the serious author question. Robbie,
Yo,
what age, how old were you when you decided that you wanted to be an author?
well, I remember writing. The first thing I remember writing was when I was 5, and that was a book. It wasn't even a thing because I couldn't write yet.
No, they didn't.
So the words were just
Sign language.
Was that
strings
thank
of
you?
letters together. But I do remember stapling a book together. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
When I was 7.
And was that just sort of mucking around for fun, or was that I want to do
Pretty
this?
sure that was in
I wanna
school.
do it.
I knew that I wanted to do it serious, as in like, obviously before the concept of making money was the thing. I thought someone
Okay.
has to decide what they want to do with their life. When
Yeah.
I was 12.
Okay.
And I knew then I wanted to write, but that was actually when I first did like a writer's workshop thing.
Mm. Mm.
And that was around 12, and that was when I thought that would be actually really... I
In
thought
the
tissue
shot.
snot used to be in center stage.
That's not even Tissue Snot yet.
That was when true.
Where is
Sorry,
actually?
I'm
Oh, Tissue
directing-
Snot's
Tissue
alright.
snot's only going to take 3 glasses before it becomes tissue
Yeah.
snot anyway.
Aaron, you
that
want
won't be
some-
very far.
Tissue snot?
Do you want the tissue snot that's now?
No,
Nah,
okay.
we're good.
You sure?
I don't want him to meet his future.
What happens if we get 2
Replacement.
tissue snots at the same time?
They've got to fight to the death,
Some kind of
and one of them ends up in the recycling.
they both end up in the recycling. I've got news for you.
Yeah.
We need more mineral water because that's our last bottle.
I'll get some Aldi
Cool.
next time. A follow-up question.
No, that's an
Sorry.
Aldi shopping spree, not Kmart.
I don't think Kmart have mineral water.
They don't.
They got everything else.
Exactly. It's like an Aldi shopping spree though. So no, not Kmart this time.
All right, another
we like the
serious,
Kmart
serious
shopping
author
list.
question. When you decided to be a writer,
Yep.
how did that change the way that you read?
I danced back and forth actually. I should probably go back a bit. Before, like, even when I was from 12 onwards, I was thinking, yeah, I really want to write books. And then I was like, I really want to write movies.
Okay.
Because I thought the books were too burdensome to read. because I was never a
Yeah.
really good reader. I
get that.
hated reading when I was in school, and I only enjoyed reading after I left school. I think deciding to become a writer meant that I read probably quicker. Like I'd pick up a
really?
book and like flick through a paragraph and then be like, oh yeah, that's how you do it. Then I put the book down and try it my own way.
You're just trying to absorb more
Yep.
quickly.
So I guess I probably started seeing books as a tool to teach how to write more than anything else. And even now I do that.
Did you become more analytical with it?
I think
like,
so,
Do you read
yeah.
more carefully, trying to
Absolutely.
break it down?
Yeah, so I pulled apart quite a few in terms of figuring out how they did it. Because I one thing that I always wanted, and I actually enrolled in a subject at uni to do this. I really wanted someone to teach me how to write a book. Like, how do you write a book? Like, there's got to be some form of kind of template how to do it. And so I went searching a lot of different places for that. And I think I learned in the end that the only way you do is by teaching yourself, by trialing and erroring, and also by looking at books. It's nice to read them instead of pulling them apart, but I suppose pulling them apart works as well. Not literally.
I don't want to.
Yeah, not literally, please.
Yeah, don't rip them up.
Yeah.
I'm the book puffer.
The what?
So,
Spoofing books.
so uni, did that
Yeah.
help? That
No,
helped you
not at
come
all. It's
around to
terrible. Talk about Instagram poets. It's horrible.
that?
No.
Really?
Yeah. it's
Wouldn't
terrible.
recommend it.
No, I wouldn't recommend trying to learn how to write in a classroom because first thing is there's no way to objectively grade writing. You can't in a classroom setting at least give writing a grade. I mean, I think there are like stylistically there are a few things where if you're looking at a book you can kind of say it's more good than bad or it's more bad than good. But I think in a classroom there's no way that you can sit down, have a teacher give you like a writing task and then it's more organic than that. And there was it just wasn't the right setting for it, I don't think.
A lot of good writers learn by obsessing over an author that they admire, or
True
maybe a small set of authors,
Yeah.
and then rereading it.
I
Even
think,
one
that
book that they
happens
wanna
quite
mimic.
a lot. Yeah.
They almost try to reverse engineer something that resonates with them already.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that Tim Winton for you?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a few. Tim Winton,
Yeah.
I'd say, and Roald Dahl.
Because that becomes your
Roald Dahl's
style.
amazing.
Yeah, Roald
in the
Dahl.
end.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's like so good.
You know, Roald Dahl and Tim Winton are examples of authors where when I read them, I feel like I could pause at some point and stop reading it and just start writing it, and I could do a pretty good effort of mimicking their
Yeah.
style. But when I read your writing, it's like our brains work differently. I
think
could
it
not
is.
mimic
Yeah.
your writing at all. So do you understand what I mean? Like, do you have those two categories?
Well, the
of, like-
beginning, the beginning for me was probably Tolkien. That was the one. Like
Yeah,
I was
right.
a massive Lord of the Rings freak. I am a massive Lord of the Rings freak.
and
No,
so
no
you,
past
you
tense
had
about
that
it.
feeling reading Lord of the Rings, like I could
Yep.
keep this story going.
Yeah, in a way. I don't know if. I think so because what I was doing at that point in time was kind of storylines that were very similar in terms of theme. Like, 'cause I mean, every I suppose person that gets into Lord of the Rings obviously loves that type of genre. You know, you love the romantic, the mythical landscape, and that's what I was writing a lot of. So on that point, yeah, I definitely could have continued the story. But you, in the same vein of trying to figure out how to write a book, I think the only way you can do that to start with is adopt the way that they've written. That's I think where that probably comes from.
That's what they say. You sort of start by mimicking, and
Well, you
then
gotta
you
figure it
find your
out.
voice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm really curious. So I've got those two categories: authors who I'm like, I cannot mimic that.
Yeah.
My brain is not wired that way, and authors where I'm like, I can probably
Yeah.
mimic that.
I think
in your mimic bucket. So
My mimic bucket.
yeah, Tolkien, I can't. Like that's for
Yeah.
me straight away. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, that's not.
Well, because Tolkien's really pretentious, and I'm really pretentious as well, so it's great. It works really well.
Do you mean pretentious is like in a disparaging way, or is in like?
No, he just uses. I've always been of the opinion that if you can use 20 words instead of 5, why not use 20 words to say the same
yeah.
thing?
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
And I think the old adage is if you can use 5 words instead of 20, why not use 5?
You like to
I love to pad it,
pad
you
it
know,
out, be a
which
little bit,
is a bad thing, strictly speaking. You should
I
be able
think-
to cut it down, but
No, I don't think it's a bad thing.
if
I
you
think
know,
you
it's
need
like
to
a
be
superpower.
tasteful.
You need to know how to use it properly. Yeah.
I think good taste is the most important thing.
Yeah, true.
And so sometimes if you make something too flowery and too kind of
Which Tolkien did a
extravagant.
lot. Of,
yeah,
a
it
lot.
can become distasteful. But if you do it well, it can be extremely tasteful.
Yeah. So Tolkien's definitely in that bucket. Who else? Because I didn't read lots of people. There's a writer called Walter Kern who wrote a book that became a movie called Up in the Air.
Oh yeah.
And
Clooney.
he's in my mimic bucket. Yeah, Clooney did it.
Right.
He's in my mimic bucket. And that's only because like the way he writes And it's probably more about the whole shape of the book rather than literally the words on the page, but just kind of the points that the book is making. I'm not sure if that makes sense. Like on the other side of that, I can't write comedy. Like I suck when it comes to writing funny stuff.
You've written some funny stuff when we did that little co-written
Oh
experiment.
yeah.
Got a chuckle.
Look, I guess maybe. I don't know. If I think of like a romantic comedy novel, I would not know where to start. So there's
no.
that. So
I
let's
would
put
think
Nicholas
if you-
Sparks in the other. Not that it's rom-com,
Yeah.
but it's pretty funny sometimes.
I would, if I was gonna,
If you were going to what?
I was gonna say, if you were going to write comedy, I would put it somewhere along Terry Pratchett.
Yeah.
Like, I imagine you could do a Terry
It's kind
Pratchett,
of
that British humour
yeah,
sort of
the
thing.
British humour thing. Oh, that's what we were saying earlier. We were talking about that.
British humor's
Yeah.
I was
amazing.
raised on British
You're
humour.
big on British humour.
That's why.
Oh, we all are.
Exactly.
It's pretty different.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
loves British humor.
Yeah.
What about you, Hope? Do you have a writer who, when you read it, you feel like you could do it? Or it like resonates, it's like,
Your soul writer.
yeah. You read a lot of
That's a good
Tom,
way.
what's his name? Not Tom Green. What's his name? Something Green.
Yeah. The guy that wrote all
Uh,
those team books.
Yeah.
See if you can work out what the name is.
I keep
Professor
thinking of
Green.
his brother Hank.
Oh yeah, there's
John Green.
There you
Yes.
go.
Tom Green is not there.
Definitely.
It's that wacky comedian. Right.
But could you mimic
Probably.
John Green?
Probably not. Maybe like a little bit, but like not like
Not as good.
exactly.
Yeah, well, he's pretty polished and
Yeah.
he's been doing it for a long time.
Exactly.
Becomes a job kind of thing. Which again is the two types as well of like. Do you think you recognize when you're reading your favorite author that they're a job author? Like Tolkien, for an example, right? Didn't make much money before he toddled off this mortal coil. God bless his soul. Like he didn't actually. His whole life, I think, was a feud between wanting to make lots of bucks and then hating the fact that his book was a sellout.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like there are authors who write books, obviously, to make cash.
I don't begrudge them that because I think
Yeah.
when they write for money, they write something that's going to be popular, not
True.
necessarily their greatest artistic achievement, but
Yeah.
they do write it to please the crowd. So if you enjoy it,
That's,
You know.
well, I suppose that's one thing.
and
That's
they're
one
probably just being too hard on themselves.
true. Because one of my favorite writers is Bernard Cornwell. Writes a lot of historical fiction. He's an awesome guy. And I remember in the early days when I was trying to figure out how to write a book, like I just would Google search author advice, how to write book, you know.
Yeah.
And in one of his interviews, I think he was giving advice, and he said, "We're not trying to write literature here. You just want to write a book." And in my mind, that clicked because I was like, I kind of want to write literature. Like
Right.
I always considered that a good book, and this is not wholesale true, but I always considered a good book is like what we're made to study. You know, the
You
kinds
want to
of
write a great novel.
what ends up being called literary. You know.
Yeah.
And there's a place for that. There's a place for your run-of-the-mill book as well. And not everyone likes literature, obviously. Like there's different. Like I remember literally in literature at school, first question that they kicked off the first term with was, why do we call this literature? What's the difference between capital L and lowercase l? Which is a really interesting question to ask.
Go on then. I'm actually.
Oh, well, I think
we're both.
What is it?
well, I think the answer ended up coming out something like there's a specific club of books that have contributed to our culture in a very unique way.
They're influential.
They're influential. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
right.
why Wuthering Heights, whether you like it or not, is a different book to, you know, I'm trying to think of just a run-of-the-mill book without offending any author.
Well, you know, like if you think of someone like
Leanne Moriarty's
Terry
work or something.
Pratchett never wrote a great novel.
Well,
I mean,
he-
he wrote great novels, but he
Yeah.
wasn't going for a.
That's not like
you know.
literary canon. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I agree with that.
great author.
Of course.
Same with you could say the same with Roald Dahl. You know, he just wrote good books
Yep.
Yeah.
for a long time.
Although BFG gets studied, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe
it
the
really?
movie. Yeah, I remember doing the film, I think.
like in uni.
I'll take high school.
I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised at Melbourne Uni. Yeah, that would probably. No,
It's a
no,
book, it's a
I think
legitimate
maybe in grade 5. Maybe?
Okay, right.
BFG. Have you done BFG?
Did you do any
No.
Roald Dahl?
I think like James and
No.
Giant Peach might be as well.
Oh, is it really?
I think so. Maybe.
But then like Clockwork
Yeah.
Orange, you know?
Well, you know,
Considered
Clockwork
literature.
Orange, he
Yeah.
wrote for money. He's considered
Which
it
is
his
fu-
worst
yeah, that's
book.
kind of-
He
yeah.
hates the book because
Yeah.
he wrote it in 2 weeks because he needed some cash and completely wrote it off.
I think on the
and it's
same
his
note,
only big
yeah.
hit, really. Yeah.
that's when they criticise Shakespeare for the same thing. It's kind of just like, well, did you realise that Shakespeare was just kind of just smashing out plays that everyone wrote the same way as he did? It's just this is what's passed down to us kind of thing.
Is that true?
Interesting perspective. Yeah, I think so, actually. With
Surely
Shakespeare.
there's Excuse me. Sure, there's an element of genius though to his.
Yeah, that's probably where I sit on that, I think.
Yeah. So he might have done it easily, but I think he was a genius at doing it.
And it's kind of helped that the, vernacular at the time was like that. Like that's how they spoke. And there was a
the way
high
they spoke.
standard.
Mm.
But I mean,
Vernacular is like vocabulary
just everyday speak.
for a
The way they spoke was like so cool.
It was so cool. But I think that's the reason why it's tested time or stood the test of time is because at that point in time, not only was kind of, I think, the playwright the pop star of the time, they kind of were, but also there was, because of that, the sense of competition. I mean, that's why we advance in technology when we're fighting wars, because the competition is massive. So at a point in history when an art form is a source of competition among people, I think that's when you get great developments.
Right. So you always just think of him as just the guy that was doing it at the time, and he was just so ahead of his time, and so there was like in a league of his own.
10 other Shakespeares.
But he was just doing what was popular at the time.
Yeah, it's true.
And he happened to be the one that was.
I dream of a time when the novel writer is like the pop. It will never happen, actually. I thought of, because you got Sundance Film Festival, right? Have you heard of Sundance Film Festival? Yo, Aaron, you heard of Sundance Film Festival? Yo, Lily, you heard of Sundance? Okay. Should I try Aidan?
Probably not.
Yeah, right.
Hi, this is Andrew.
You want to?
Yes, we need refills.
Are you picking up Aidan? Yep. Aidan,
Refill.
he'll come down.
And they're gonna fight to the death to see who.
Are either you guys
not
going to
be
tag
recycled.
in on this microphone at any point, or you will? You will?
Yeah, I want to see.
You do as well?
Not yet.
Yep.
I'm not done yet.
All right.
Surely we can duel a microphone.
Well, yeah, you can, but it just becomes a question of,
How much sound?
yeah, we really need to keep it to one person talking at a time. Otherwise, so if you get too many people, it becomes all jarbled.
Great point. Jarbled.
Jarbled?
Is a great word.
I think I meant garbled.
Thanks for coming, Aidan.
Thanks, mate.
See ya.
You coming tomorrow?
See you, mate.
Friday. Cool.
I have a really good question
on.
for you.
Yeah, shoot.
How do you decide what historical event you're gonna base your book on?
That is a great
Actual good
question.
question.
I've
Thank
never
you.
had that before. That's awesome. It's a really easy answer as well. It's whatever is fascinating me at the time.
It's easy enough.
Yeah, it is true. I mean, I've got a few things at the moment that are kind of, you pick them up, you nibble on them a little bit, and then you drop them. And originally, what I do a lot of now is Australian history, and I never liked Australian history until about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I was never interested in it until then. Before then, it was always your kind of medieval stuff. I loved that.
Medieval's so good.
Yeah. And
And then you can do all the fun torches.
should we be calling the cops after this? Wow.
Yeah,
Serial. Yeah, wow.
Move you to Slytherin, I think.
So before we get all too dark and macabre,
You're not a serial killer. It was a joke.
unless you're a Mandarin.
Unless you're a Mandarin.
Yeah, I never really got into the torture chamber bit, but yeah, it's just, I suppose even on that level, it's the unique things about a specific time in history is why anyone loves any period of history. So, at the moment, I just love kind of studying how Australia came to be, and I've always really loved the idea of kind of frontier, mountain man kind of thing.
Exploring.
Lone
Yeah.
lone adventurer goes off into the wild.
You
and
forget that they didn't know
what was beyond the map, right?
Yeah, the bits of Australia that were explored were pretty limited then, and
Oh,
now we're on
amazing.
this huge island that had no idea what was out there.
Amazing feats.
Imagine
Yeah.
the feeling.
We kind of take that for
Yeah.
granted.
Yeah.
It's only 150 years too, and it's so much, so different.
So much has happened.
Absolutely.
Robbie's just finished the first draft of one about a cannibal. True story about a cannibal.
Tasmanian
have to
convict.
Drop that
fun.
bomb.
Yeah, sure thing.
Sorry.
I actually brought it in case I was going to get to work on it. So yeah, that was an awesome story, and it's a true story too. Most of it is I feel kind of bad. I feel like I'm just plagiarizing history because it's all the stuff's there. You just got to string it together. Awesome stuff. So yeah, those types of stories. How can you not be fascinated by that?
Yeah.
He spoiler alert. He escaped. they escaped from.
That's not
They were
surprised,
convicts
yeah.
and they
It's
escaped.
gonna happen now.
And 8 of them escaped, and were
8 of
trying to
them.
make their way to some kind of safe haven.
Crossing a wilderness that
whatever
had
they
never
could
been
find.
crossed.
Yeah.
Oh.
We've done it.
Finished.
We did
Yo,
it.
Lily, you got to make tissue snot.
Chuck him to me.
Lily, you're up.
We're not gonna work out which one's which. Which one do we recycle?
It's a good point. You got to make him look different to the other one, okay?
So we can decipher who is who.
Tissue Snot's brother.
What's Tissue Snot's brother's name?
What's the
Aidan's gone.
tissue?
Toilet paper.
Toilet paper
Yeah.
bogus. Nah, it's too long-winded.
Definitely.
So yeah, 8 people escaped
And, well, one of them.
this penal colony. Yeah, and then one of them walked out alive. And then he admitted, I think when he got caught, eventually he admitted to that kind of one by one they kind of cast lots and figured out who was going to be the one that they cut up. Because they had no food, they couldn't actually catch any food, and there was nothing growing wild that they knew how to eat because they didn't have the know-how. And then when he was in court, he admitted to the crimes, and they didn't believe him, so they sent him back to where he came from, and then he escaped again, and he ate this guy as well. Yeah,
That's great.
I know. And so yeah, there's a lot more. The really cool thing about that story is that there were 3 people that all interacted at that time, and they were all Irish. They were all born within very, very close proximity to one another. And I love the fact they all ended up in the same place and they all kind of interacted. One of them was a soldier, the other was a priest, and this third guy was a convict. And they were
They
kind
all
of all
ended
the
up
same, from the same stock.
In a little area in
Yeah.
Tasmania.
And the question that I ask is, why do they end up in so many different places? Like, if you come from the same place, I mean, what's happened in between? Which is the cool thing. But that's like with any story. I mean, you've got to ask a question to begin, you know? Like when you wrote the true autobiography about Andy.
That's a great
Hope
one.
How did he
Yeah,
become
we'll-
such a degenerate?
No, but the thing is, like, it is based on truth.
It's not.
You cannot. No, it is. You did go to Tokyo.
Not really.
For those watching, Hope's working on the unauthorized biography of yours truly.
No, but like, it is based on true facts.
Read it on
The only
On the air.
oh yeah,
Nah.
we'll do a reading some other time.
Another time.
The only bit that's true
Is
is
that you went to
that I
Tokyo.
went to Japan. Yeah, I went to
So
Tokyo.
you in Japan.
Yeah.
I, for one, am looking forward to it being published. Yeah.
It will be.
Yeah.
I made sure of
I
this.
didn't travel naked, stuffed in a suitcase, unconscious. 'cause
On
my
an IV
girlfriend-
drip of vanilla vodka.
Yeah, and
And tequila gold.
And
Don't
tequila
forget
gold.
tequila
Yeah.
gold.
Of course. Yeah, no, man.
all right, good question.
That's
Well
actually
done.
a really great question.
Yeah. Welcome to the stage,
Welcome to the Up and Up show.
Aaron.
You'll be on later.
You'll be on.
What's up?
No.
Nothing.
Yeah,
I've just been sitting.
Aaron's working on a cyberpunk novel.
Yeah,
Is that the word?
steampunk,
What is
Steampunk.
cyberpunk a thing, actually? Because I know steampunk.
Yeah,
What's
cyberpunk is it's got to do with the ethics of robotics and AI and cybernetic
Cool.
engineering.
Yeah, mine's more steampunk. 'cause
Steampunk
it's-
because
Nice.
it's mechanical.
So,
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
history, do you like kind of the Victorian stuff? Like,
Well, it's not really got that much Victorian stuff in it, except for one guy with a mechanical monocle, but
right on.
that's it.
it's kind of I say cyberpunk because it's got cyborgs, which is cyberpunk sort of more, but they're mechanical cyborgs, so they've
Yeah,
been
so it's like
mechanicalized.
How is cyborg-
Steam cyber.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So just a lot of steam power. Pretty much it's just everything, but with steam power.
and
Yeah.
cogs
And cogs and, yeah, a lot
Yeah.
of gears. Sick.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. What's the rough, that's the world? Is there like story?
Well, that's what's happening to the world.
Yeah, okay, cool. And you got people fighting back from that?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Greenies.
Although they've got steampunk.
They've also got
bits
steampunk,
as well.
so yeah, double standard greenies. Yeah.
So I met Aaron at the very first Launchpad school incursion, and
Which
I said,
was then Middle King
Middle
Lake,
King
right?
Lake, yeah. And I said to the guys, I said to all the kids, okay, everyone, we're going to be writing short stories. And I'm thinking I'm launching these kids in their literary career, and I'll be the guy that gets them into writing. And Aaron says, oh yeah, I'll work on the short story, but I'll have to stop working on my novel for a while. So I'm not. I'm getting in the way of
Yeah.
his literary career, if anything.
stalling this kid's creative.
Yeah. And you would have been 11 probably, or 10, were you?
12.
12.
So that was 2 years ago.
and
Yeah,
he-
Launchpad's been running for a while.
Yeah, well, in its earlier form,
Yeah.
the school incursion.
It's awesome.
Aaron brought in his novel, 6 chapters, I think it was.
Sick.
It was like a Victorian Agatha Christie style murder mystery.
Dishonored, sounds like.
It was
It's
really
awesome.
good. You never finished it. I still
No.
don't know who done it.
So is there? So what's the mystery aspect?
Well, it was just a robbery. Like,
So
'cause-
cool.
A murder / robbery.
Yeah.
How
murder,
long had you been
robbery.
working on the novel beforehand?
Not that long actually.
Do you remember like your first project that you picked up to work on? So before steampunk, what was it? What was
Like
kind of
just before.
yeah?
Steampunk?
Well, yeah, before then, because we can go backwards. It's always probably hard to
I
track.
had an idea about it was Earth.
Yeah.
Which is actually quite rare for me. I don't usually write.
Everything
books
is
set on
just
Earth.
completely out of Earth. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was about all these 13 spirits of different types of water on Earth.
Awesome.
So there was like the spirit of storm water and stuff like that, and these.
Like drains.
Drains of the spirit of
Yeah,
storm.
sick.
I think you meant
Yeah.
something more a bit
Well-
more
Yeah.
extravagant than that.
Yeah.
So when I met you at 12, it seemed to me that you had already decided you wanted to write.
Yes. Yeah.
How long before then? Was it like you just decided, or was it since you were like 5 or 6? or
Yeah,
something like
about that.
that? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because your family's quite literary. Is that right? Your dad's a journalist,
Well, yeah, sort of.
sort of, and your mum is something to do with proofreading or editing.
Yeah, she used to be a proofreader.
Yeah,
Sick.
yeah.
It's in the genes, man.
I envy both you guys for starting so early. I think I was, 20 or 22 when I thought I
Well,
should.
what do you think is the cause of the delay? Would you call it a delay?
For me, it was music.
Well, I think
just
yeah.
wanted to
You
be-
originally
I
it
wanted
was
to be a
music
rock
was your
star.
thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I still wrote back then, but I just didn't want to be a writer
Yeah.
per se. Yeah.
I wouldn't be too hard on yourself because I mean, from what you've told me, it's just like the music was your thing before you realised that writing was the next
Was
thing.
my thing. Yeah, yeah. When I switched to writing, I was like, oh, this is my thing. Like, obviously, what have I been
Yeah.
doing for 10 years?
Of course, just all in disguise.
Yeah, yeah. Just wasn't very ambitious either. I didn't. I
I
wanted to be a rock star.
Well, I think the common
It is
Yeah,
quite.
yeah.
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
less and less fiction.
My story is true. Thank you very much.
I'd never got knocked out by my girlfriend because I was a drunk and put naked into a suitcase.
Let's get
and
her
sent
side
to
of the story,
Japan.
shall we? I think the common
Just want to go
denominator,
on the record there.
the common denominator is probably the creativity
Yeah.
more than anything else,
Yeah.
whether it's writing or music or film,
Mm.
art, whatever. I think it's always that you want to create something from
Express
day one.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. so you
It's
know
all
you're creative
storytelling.
at least. That's where it starts.
Yeah, I knew that much.
Don't read it too. Yeah.
Aaron's also working on a. Can I tell him this? The script.
Oh, you're working on a
Yeah.
script, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sick.
Doctor Who episode. He wants
Really?
to- yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so cool.
Nice. So you obviously watched lots of Doctor Who.
Yes. Lots.
Yeah, it's an understatement. Right on.
Yeah. Aaron tells me that occasionally they'll make an episode based on a
Yeah.
fan script.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So he's gone for that.
How often does that happen?
I don't know, but I did read something where, like, in the past, back in the
Yeah.
old series,
Yeah.
someone actually, like, they didn't just base it off but they got some guy in to actually write the script.
So it was that
after.
good that they continued on with.
They actually adopted
Yeah.
it into
Yeah.
the crew.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Wow.
That's probably a bit ambitious. It'll probably happen more like they'll base it off. But
Free trip to England.
that's what I'm aiming for.
Still pretty cool
so,
street cred though. Like
Yeah.
you always want that one thing to either get published or get produced. Have you ever thought of kind of you want to make films or TV?
No.
Not really?
Not really.
It's just you love Doctor Who, so that's the one thing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Mm.
just I've had a lot of ideas, and I just think
Yep.
that some of them would be good to actually see.
Yeah,
on TV.
true. Yeah. Well, I always thought that with movies. I think it's just cool to have whatever idea that you have, turn into something. I think for me it was probably different because I thought that early in wanting to make movies was just the lazy way of writing books.
Oh, really?
I thought it was easier. Stupid. Yeah, it's pretty stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely not the easier way. Would be a lot of fun, but I can't wield a camera. You can though.
Yeah, when I I've done very limited short filmmaking and like creative filmmaking.
Yep.
But I love it.
Yeah.
And I keep whoever's helping me out, my actors,
Yeah.
it's usually just whatever friends I can rope into it. They'll be like, dude, we've been doing this for 10 hours and we haven't eaten. Like, I'm like, oh, really? Yeah. I just
Yes.
completely lose track of
cool.
what I'm doing. I get so
Yeah.
involved. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Oh,
Oh, we
new
got one.
tissue snot. Whoa.
Oh.
It's got a goatee.
So
and
is that a
mustache.
senior to
This
like
is
senior to
alter
the
ego.
previous one?
That's the younger one.
Yeah, obviously.
With facial hair. Hey, where's old tissue snot?
I feel like we should explain what tissue snot is.
Go for it.
That tissue snot
Okay.
looks
Audio.
younger, actually. This tissue snot looks 12.
Yeah, that's definitely junior.
Or-
Dragon Ball Z.
All right, tissue snot. Oh dear. Oh dear.
Where
Yeah,
do
so
you
we're
begin?
going to a script development workshop in
That sounds awesome.
about 2 weeks. Yeah. How
Where,
about
whereabouts?
Arc Theatre? It's at Lilydale, Mount Lilydale College. But
Sweet.
it's being hosted by Arc Theatre.
Yeah,
So they're
nice.
inviting a bunch of actors and a bunch of writers working on
awesome.
scripts, and the actors play out your script, and then the
Oh,
other
seriously?
writers in the room give you feedback on what they've just watched.
That sounds so cool.
I hear that you're a good actor too.
Not
What have you
really.
acted
No,
in?
I liked to think that I was a good actor.
your
but
ex-teacher from a few years ago told me last week that you were a really good actor.
which ex?
Kath.
Oh, Catherine.
Yeah, it was Catherine.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Mrs.
Cool.
Yeah,
Mrs.
basically.
Catherine.
Have you ever done a play? Have you done plays? Did you do plays?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did a annual script
Yeah, nice.
skit thing.
Really cool.
What
Yeah.
one did you do? Yeah. No, she told me what you did. Can't remember. We were talking about you at the launch party.
Oh, okay.
You made an impact.
Yeah, you did.
So are these two fighting to the death? How does that even work?
I'm not sure. Not sure what's going on. We've never had two tissue snots at the same time, so what are you guys
I want
doing?
to see what that sounds
Careful
like
of that
from
camera,
the camera
please.
point of view.
Don't bump it. Can anyone think of any more serious author questions for the
Yes, I
serious
can.
author? Oh, please go right ahead.
Shoot.
What is the most
Yeah.
difficult thing about starting a story for you?
Starting is the most difficult thing. No,
Oh, really? Oh,
no. I like I love kicking it off, but then you get a few words in and it just trails, and you're like, where's it go from here? I think that's probably the hardest part, is carrying it on. So I think that's probably the hardest part of starting a story, because you can have an idea, and then you just where do I start? Where do I put it? And then you can start a couple of lines, and then you've really got to have. I think you got to have a plan, or at least you got to know where it runs.
You're a planner?
I have become a planner. Yes, I forced myself to become a planner. I was never a planner. I was always act on impulse kind of guy. But
It
now,
helps in the later stages. I
Absolutely.
think the plan is when you go, oh, thank God I planned this, because
Yep.
I always say that ending a story is the hardest bit. And I think I've said to you,
yeah,
1,000 words at the end of your novel
Yep.
is the equivalent of about 10,000 at the start in terms of effort.
yeah. Well, you definitely gear it up to kind of making that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to choose. You have to wrap everything up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In your experience, what's the hardest thing you've ever had with starting?
Introducing the characters, because
Yeah.
or more like the characters finding out what's going on.
Yep.
So when I've been stuck, I've always just made it that the characters already know what's going on, and then the reader's
man,
introduced.
it's so difficult. The hardest thing about that, I think, is that you've got the reader, and then you've got the characters in the book. And how do you make the readers understand the stuff that's taken for granted in the book?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Mm.
It's really difficult. Tolkien's way of doing it was just to smash out a chapter of Gandalf telling Frodo what's up,
Yeah, just
which is a
the
very,
old
very testy way to do
dialogue
it.
explanation.
Yeah, that's
thing.
a really...
You
Like,
know what?
I struggled with that early.
My take on that is you can actually leave the reader hanging longer than you sort of think.
Yeah, the old
Sort
respect
of-
the reader trick.
Yeah, they'll be intrigued to work out what's going on, and they'll keep reading to sort of piece it together.
Yep.
You don't really need to explain it all in one chunk.
Yeah.
Little drips.
It's a
and
hard
drabs.
thing to let go, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can actually do that much slower than you'd
Mm.
think. You can do that over 10 chapters, and they'll keep reading, as long as they're not completely in the dark and
It's
they
a
don't know
technique
what's
to keep
going
them
on.
hooked, I think. Because then they're obviously... Unless you've got a question to answer, then why would you read a book? So that's kind of why they, I
It's
suppose,
the lure.
say in, the lure, that's it.
I want the answer to this question, so you keep reading
Yeah.
to lures
Yeah,
you through the
Definitely
pages.
the hardest. Yeah.
That is tricky. Eventually, you have to explain it.
Yeah.
But how do you do that? I think if you just
It's the build
drag it on long enough, it just sort of happens through osmosis.
Yeah, eventually.
To the reader, they just
No, I
get
always
it.
found it difficult, mainly with very specific types of stories, but the backstory thing, always really difficult. Especially if we're talking about setting it up in some kind of really fantastic world or whatever else. Like, you've got a whole lot of stuff which you've been working on. Like, I know a whole bunch of the guys that come to the writers group do this, like their world building.
Yeah.
And you got this whole world, you just like, I just want to tell them about everything, the currency and all this type of stuff. But you've got to really restrain that.
Yeah, you do.
That's really
Yeah.
difficult.
readers have very little patience for that, for
Mm.
explaining a
Yeah,
place.
because it ends up just becoming like this verbal diarrhea kind of thing
Tolkien.
where you just yeah, exactly, Tolkien. Yeah, pretentious.
It's funny we've used that as example of bad writing so many times tonight. When you
Sorry, Professor.
you started this off by saying it
Yeah.
was one of your favorites.
Yeah, you got to
So-
be able to hate your favorites, don't you? Yeah. Any more questions from the gallery?
Do you want to hop up, Lily?
Yes.
Do you have any more questions?
No, that's
Yeah.
Really cool.
Cool. Thanks, Aaron. Oh no. Slytherin. Welcome.
What, Slydog?
I know, that's what I'm saying. 2 Slytherins and 1
The
Ravenclaw. He
chair.
doesn't stand a
Great.
chance. Do
The chair is warm.
Books won't save me now.
you have any burning questions for Robbie?
How can you eat so many mandarins?
They're good.
Yeah. After the 6th one, though.
That, please.
I'll drop it.
The m- Please do.
It's for her betterment, yeah. No, all right, I'll do it. I'll drop the mandarin. Go.
You're very good at eating mandarins.
Do you plan your stories before you write them?
Never used to. The most recent one,
I feel short.
whiskey. The most recent one,
You can push the chair up.
I kind of planned in my head, but what I did was I wrote out each chapter title and then a little bit of info about what happened. But I never used to plan them out. Actually, that might be a lie. I think there's degrees of planning.
Yeah.
When I always thought of a plan, I always thought it's a really kind of structured thing, whereas sometimes a plan is just a couple of ideas on a piece of paper. Depends on how much you know where you're going. But no, I never used to, and then I've only made myself do it now because I do think it helps. What about you? Do you plan? You said earlier you don't.
Well, I don't like to, like, in school when we have to write a story, if it's like
You always do the plan after.
a task that we have to write a story,
Yeah.
a specific type of story, then we have to do a plan. But
Mm.
I don't like to, like, in just free writing or when I write outside of school. I just like to like start with an idea and then just build it up
Yeah.
as I go.
I think the length
Wing
of whatever you're writing is a big one as well. Nice.
It's both very valid approaches. It's
Well, I
another
think-
one of those things that you can... Actually, you know what? I'm a very strict planner, but when I write short stories, I wing them. I just go off the...
Because a
off the
short
cuff.
story, I think that's kind of the definition of a short story is it's kind of less complex,
Yeah.
more simple.
And it's also like, if it doesn't work, it only took a couple of hours. So
Turf
it's a bit risk-free. You know, if
Yeah.
I'm going to write a novel, I want to know it's going to work because it's going to take me a long time.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I always think that probably those who don't plan think that planning takes away from the magic of it,
I can get that.
makes it more clinical, which
But what
I
yeah.
did think for quite a while.
You'd have to be very, I was going to say motivated, but inspired to write like that, I think.
Yep.
Because you'd just be writing because you love the process of writing.
Yep.
It's that creative flow.
Well, I definitely think there are two moods that you're in. You're either in a mood where you're what you're writing is that impulse, you know, it's coming just naturally.
Yeah.
Or you're sitting down and forcing a pen into your hands to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's often been said that if one's not working, you got to do the other. So
Yeah.
you kind of almost have to force yourself into that
It's-
where the idea just clicks.
Discipline versus motivation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've been saying for a while, I think if you can be disciplined, you don't need motivation because you'll
It's true.
keep writing when you're not motivated if you're disciplined. But it doesn't work the other way around.
No.
So it's for a defense against writer's block, you want to be disciplined.
It's true.
You'll push through. You'll
Which
force
is
yourself,
hard
yeah.
because you can think that your idea is going nowhere when you're doing it.
Is
It's-
writer's block when you are writing a story and you get stuck and you just can't
Writer's
like,
block is a myth.
move on with it?
Yeah, it is. It's when you're writing and then you hit a wall and you're like,
Yep.
what happens next? And
That's
then
pretty much it.
you might have just written 10,000 words and you're halfway, into the story, and then you can't, like, for 2 years you can't think of what happens next. Like, it
There's
just,
some people that think it's a medical condition.
really,
Well, no, some people treat it as if it's this thing where it's just like, oh, I'm affected by writer's block, I can't write. You're just
Oh,
like,
it's an
you can.
affliction.
Just-
It's easy
you're out
to
of
start
ideas.
right
That's-
again. What idea, because I don't plan and I just flow straight into my writing and I'll write like heaps and heaps and then I'll get stuck. I just look around and like when I was starting a story, the yellow umbrella, I was just looking around here and I saw the picture of this.
what's the yellow umbrella about?
It's about it's not very structured yet
Hmm.
because I've got 2 in the making and I'm working
Cool.
a lot better, a lot harder on the other one. But I just got the idea from looking around.
Just looked around.
Yeah,
looked
I
for
think
inspiration.
we need more writers like you because a lot of people kind of just like start feeling sorry for themselves. They think, oh, I'm out of ideas. That's it. You know, I'm just going to wait for the ideas to come. Well,
Yeah.
No, you need
No,
to.
you go out and you
Yeah.
look for them. Yeah. And if you can't find them in the room, then maybe you go for a
Of course.
walk. Maybe you.
We just got to know what inspires what
Yeah.
you're doing, I guess.
There's a book on that bookshelf, and on the front of it, there's a sticker that says "Top 100 Novels of All Time." I think it says. And
Seriously?
that book was written by a man who just sat and started writing until he'd finished a novel. Yeah, on the road, Jack Kerouac.
Really? Oh, so it's not actually a list of the top 100 novels of all time.
Well, it's a sticker that's on the front of the
Oh,
book.
it's one of them. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, apparently it's one of them. You know, obviously that's up for debate.
What's it called?
On the road,
Oh, on the road. Yeah.
Jack
Cool.
Kerouac.
Well, I think the bottom line is that everyone does it differently,
Hmm.
which is true. Some people can just, spit out an award-winning novel, and then you just got to find your style. You know how you do
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
Which is part of the whole development. And I remember one of my teachers in school, who probably taught me more than anything about writing, said that writing, the process is just you write and then you rewrite and then you rewrite and then you rewrite,
Hmm.
and that what you do for the first is not necessarily what's going to come out at the end. You need to not be so hard on yourself. The writing process is the process itself. So it's this constant journey.
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole thing, even with your development, is that the more you write, the better you get, and you just keep writing and you don't stop.
What's the magic number they say? 10 million words.
Oh,
or
I
something
don't
like
believe
that.
any of that. However, Neil Gaiman did say, Neil Gaiman?
Oh no.
What's a book that Neil Gaiman actually wrote a thing with Terry Pratchett called Good Omens. Yeah. Do you know Terry Pratchett?
No.
Man, oh man,
I
we've got to
don't
listen
know
some
very,
books.
I don't
So,
know
what
very many authors.
was the last book you read?
Well, I'm reading a book now at school. It's I'm not sure what age group it's fitted for.
Cool.
And if it's science fiction, it's called How I Alienated My Grandmother, and
Really?
it's actually very funny, but
Yeah,
it's
cool.
got all different sort of aspects to it.
Nice.
I'm really enjoying it. I nearly finished it.
Nice.
It's pretty thick.
Yeah, right on.
Well, for me.
Well, there's the guy that wrote this guy Neil. He's an author, and he said that because I think someone asked him that question about how do you know when you're ready to write books. This was a guy who I think he referenced the 10 million word rule,
Yeah.
which is some people think that you need to write. It's more of a loose guideline, but you
Yeah.
need to write 10 million words before you can actually write a book.
Before you'll write anything good.
Yeah, it's
they
kind of like your
reckon,
trial. It's like Ed Sheeran said, I think he does so many hours of gigs before he can actually... It's about making your craft better.
Yeah.
But this guy Neil said that I wrote something, it was not very good, so then I wrote something else that was a little bit better, but still not great. And I kept writing until I only got a little bit better each time.
Incrementally. yeah.
Incrementally.
I have a weird way of writing because the ideas just come to me as I'm going. Sometimes I'll stop at one point and I'll just think for a while about what's going to happen next and things. And sometimes I'll get so far ahead in the story and then I come back to my page and I'm only on the first 10 pages.
So then you got to do, it's
Yeah.
almost like
So I have
just
so
data entry.
so then
You
I
already
have-
know what happens.
So then I have to save what I've already thought and try and write that out. But then usually I forget some of it and then I'll stop and think again. And that idea will change and it will become a different thing. So
So
make
you
sure
kind of let it keep evolving.
changes as I go through.
Mm.
I'm exactly the same. Most of the story that I'm writing, I come up with when I'm not writing it. That's when you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
So I'm probably the same as that.
Do you when you think of all these things, do you note them? Or do you just keep them in your head?
No, I just keep them in my head. One time I was just hanging around at my house doing nothing. And then I got up and I went to the computer and I wrote a short story. And then
Cool.
that actually won a competition for the year 5 level at my school.
Wow.
Right on.
I know you planned the one that you wrote in the Launchpad book because I made you.
Yeah.
Can you remember
That was
it?
actually a great story.
Yes, I do. I based it on Back to the Future. I couldn't get any idea because
That's
it was the school's 150th
Yeah.
anniversary. It had to be either set 150 years in the past or the future.
You really limited your options on that
I
one.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I couldn't think of anything for this. So I just watched all the Back to the Future movies. Like, I love them. I don't know why.
Yeah, me too.
No,
Some of my favorite movies.
I'm just remembering because the theme of that book was 150 years, and I think there's 90 short stories in that book, and 82 of them are about time travel.
Yeah.
It was a very
Yeah.
limiting theme.
Yeah.
That's my bad.
Yeah, mine was sort of about like the time traveling part of it was actually a problem because somebody had invented a time machine, and then in a way that another person accidentally, like without knowing, activated it, and it took them to the future. So and they couldn't get back, and then the people who made it had to come and rescue that person.
We'll have the book here somewhere, won't we?
It's over
I'm
there.
looking at it right over there. Yep.
But I don't really like my
Live
story.
reading.
Well, it was a very limited theme, so you couldn't really choose, exactly what you wanted to write about, and it was a very quick exercise. Like you
was a very good
planned
short
it in
story.
the morning. Yeah.
So you write it in one day, don't you? You wrote it one day?
No, it was written over a few weeks, but we planned
cool.
it on the first day.
Really cool.
So it's like, today we're planning a short story that you'll definitely have to write.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome. So Lilydale?
Yeah, Lilydale Primary.
Is Lilydale doing it again this year? Or
Not this year, but I think they might do it again in the future.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
really
about
cool.
next year? Because that's my last year.
Well, talk to
Get
Joe.
into the high school program.
Talk to Mrs. Butler.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that is her name. I forgot about that.
I get the kids, whatever they say they want to do, I'm like, well, nag the teacher
Sounds
for me.
teacher, yeah.
Yeah.
You
Cool.
can nag the teacher.
I know, but it's so much better
fast.
if you nag them
Because
because
then
it's
they
like
know
the
that it's
students
something
want
the
to do
students
it.
actually want.
Okay.
You're my sales rep.
Okay.
You get a commission.
Sleeper agent.
I'll be.
Yeah,
Just
you do.
pay her
Yeah.
a commission in Mandarin.
Mine
That's all
that's
right.
that stand there with the yeah, cool. Yeah, you get a
I'll
commission.
nag the teachers for you.
One free book out of the library here.
Library.
Library.
So
Library.
if I get the teacher to get you to come and do a book at our school, I can get a free book.
Yes,
Okay.
I think it's a pretty good deal.
that's a good deal
Oh,
Of
great
my
deal.
choice.
from the
Of his
from the
choice.
library.
Of my choice.
Yeah, you
With
can
a
get
twist.
any book from the.
No,
yeah, you
I
get
don't
War and
want
Peace.
that thing. It's like
That
this
thing.
big.
Oh man, Leo's not having a good rap tonight.
Has anyone in this room read it?
No, are you kidding
You
me?
haven't.
It's like a million
You
pages long.
haven't.
No, I haven't.
Has he read it?
No,
Every,
he's
uh,
been dead too many times by Hope, but he won't do it.
I'll read it one day. Why do you think I bought it?
You read what page?
You're,
Come
well,
on, Hope.
you've read
Stay
more than anyone else here.
strong. Stay strong. You can do it.
it's the book
Over
that.
about 10 years, if you try.
Probably actually.
Maybe. If you.
I used to do that to get
24/7
through a book.
tops 20 years.
I used to try and figure out how long it takes to read a specific book because I was really impatient with reading. I'd be like, if I read so many pages a day, I can get this book done in 3 weeks.
Well, if
I
it's
used to do that.
good, you'll get through it. I mean, I read
Why would you
it.
True.
want to
I read
rush
So
it?
fickle.
Why
Stephen
would you
King's
want to
It.
rush it?
Well, it's not rushing. It's just otherwise I pick it up and never like.
Yes,
I'll never
it
pick it
is.
up again, you know?
It is too rushing. And you're supposed to pick it up when you feel like you need to read.
True, but I've with that theory taken years to read some books. You know, so
So,
some. I mean, I think I'm pretty much a slave to a really good book. Like if it's a
Oh,
really
can you
good
stop?
book,
sorry.
I just realised it might be
Yeah.
coming through the microphones.
drum beat. If it's a really good book, I'll smash it out. But some books I'm pretty fickle.
Do you quit books?
I'm a quitter.
Yeah.
I'm a book quitter, which is not great. Some people that I know can just pick up a book, no matter where they are, what's going on, read it. I've got to be a really specific like place, or it's got to
Oh,
be a
really?
really specific book.
No, I'm probably the first one. I've
Depends.
been known to walk down the footpath
You're one of those.
reading a book.
Yeah.
My friend
I
nearly
envy
ran me
that.
over once. I nearly
Oh,
got hit by
seriously?
a car. She's beeping, and she's like,
I've tried
Andy.
to.
It's like your iPhone.
I've tried to like read a book while I'm walking somewhere, like in reading at school. Like I'll be reading, and I'm just like, I don't want to put it down, and I'll try and walk to my pigeonhole.
Did you walk in circles?
But no, but I like bang into a table or somebody.
have you ever fallen asleep reading a book and dropped it on your face?
No,
I've done that.
I don't read when I'm.
Wow, committed. I
Yeah.
normally fall asleep before, and then I'm just like, oh,
I've
okay.
dropped it on my
Like,
face.
If like I don't get tired while I'm reading, and if I'm I don't read when I'm tired because that means like to me when I'm reading I start to like not like be really hearing the
You
book.
miss-
even though
you
I'm
miss what's
reading
being
it, I
said?
can't-
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
you're not.
actually
Yeah,
understand it.
you're not
Mm.
taking it in. My mum told me she always falls asleep when she tries to read. And I said, well, how do you read? And she says, well, I make a cup of tea, I put my pajamas on, I get into bed with a hot water bottle, and I lay down. I'm like, Mum, you're describing going to sleep,
Going
right?
to bed. Yeah. Just with a book.
Yeah. That's why I walk down the street while I do it.
Yeah, true.
Keeps me alert.
It will put you to sleep though. Some books. Like it's actually a really, really good tactic to falling asleep. Depends.
I was going to make another Tolkien joke,
What kind
but
of book. Oh,
I'll
yeah,
lay
true.
off the book.
Oh man, actually though, like when I was reading Lord of the Rings, I remember really tearing the wallpaper off. When I was reading Lord of the Rings, I remember reading it's like sleeping on cue. So it's in the first book, The Fellowship of the Ring, when they go into the old forest
Yeah.
and
Oh,
they meet
and it
Mr.
gets
Willow.
all-
Yeah, they're
Gets
like
all
Book is this?
psychedelic.
Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
I don't know if that.
Yeah. So have you seen the movie?
Lord of the Rings.
Have you seen Lord of the Rings, the movie? The Next Generation. I feel old now.
I'm sorry.
Where am I?
Which it shouldn't even because, man, you haven't seen Lord of the Rings?
Never heard of it.
We're going to have a screening here
I don't know what's
with
Sorry.
parental
You know The Hobbit?
permission.
The Hobbit.
I think
Yeah.
Aaron is just flabbergasted right
What's
now.
happening right now?
Sorry.
Wow, I really feel like my whole world's falling apart. Anyway, so in this book, which
it's
is
just
awesome.
me. It's like
Hope?
Two of them. I have not actually seen them.
That's worse. That's
We're doing it.
worse.
My house, and I like.
We're having a
I
Lord of the
know-
Rings
no, I know of
screening
them.
here.
Yeah.
No, I know of them. I've just never read or seen.
Okay,
or-
so you've heard of Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Oh, thank
I don't
God.
know what's worse though, you know?
But
Like,
I have no idea.
I've heard
what it's
of them
about.
somewhere in the midst
It's a
of time.
fantasy story.
Except for Gollum.
Yeah.
Maybe.
They're very long.
Yeah, yeah.
Very long.
Dragons, wizards.
I know you need to elevate that to the top.
Really?
Anyway, so
Tell
Fellowship
us
of the Ring,
more.
right? It's when they're walking through, and then I think they go to Mr. Willow, and just I was falling asleep when I was reading this.
Is that they go into a forest and it becomes very psychedelic? And
Very
What does that
psychedelic.
mean?
trippy.
Okay, so like the tripping out on, like if you eat too many mandarins. Sorry.
I'm 8 and 6, and I'm fine.
Yeah. Oh,
No, I am fine.
crapulent.
I am not crapulent. I am not crapulent on mandarins.
So Frodo and a whole
guys,
bunch of the other
step
hobbits
up.
get crapulent on this really funky forest water. And then they're literally, Tolkien describes them falling asleep. I remember reading that, and I think I fell asleep while I was reading it.
It's quite effective then.
Amazing.
Did you have
Yeah.
some of the water?
No, well, no, I didn't. I just
Not
read the
that water.
book. So it's cool when that happens because then it's like I felt like I was in there.
Mm.
So now whenever I think of that bit, it reminds
Oh,
me
that's
of
cool.
sleep.
It lulled you into
Added
sleep.
it's like a 3-dimensional book, you know,
That's
added a
kinda
different
cool.
level.
I do want to read War and Peace one day.
It's one of those things I think you kind of are
It's like-
obliged to
Oh my
read.
God, I just realized something.
Every
What?
author must read it, but none of them have.
Ah,
You
don't
always
take
say
it.
that in
People
the Totally
pretend.
Real Book reviews.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Totally Real Book reviews.
Do you know what the Totally Real Book reviews are?
Watch that video.
You need to watch that.
I don't think I've watched that video actually.
It's on
Oh my
Launchpad.
God.
Hilarious.
I
Oh wait, no,
What?
no. Which book was
What?
it?
There were multiple.
You were
There were
doing
multiple-
one.
yeah,
What
there
book
was
was that? What book was that? What book was that?
Hope did a few.
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
one was in there. Lily did a review of your book.
It
You
was-
read my book?
We'll show you it.
No.
Yeah, we'll show
Oh,
you.
right.
You don't say it's not.
That was the fun part.
Well, that's an incentive.
This
I gotta
is
watch
your
it
book,
now.
Right?
That is my book. You want to hold it up to the camera for a bit of plug?
Plug it. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Good
Let
plug.
me get the spotlight.
Oh, yeah. Spotlight it up.
So, what was your review of my book?
Oh, it was absolutely terrible.
No, because we hadn't. We're like doing Totally Real Book reviews, which is book reviews where you haven't read the book.
You haven't read the
but
book
you
yet.
can review
That makes me feel a little better.
Instant book reviews. No, your review was
Is that
Everybody Dies
you?
the end.
Yeah, that is. Does it look like me?
No.
Nope.
It's photoshopped.
All right, guys. Any final questions for this very serious, very
Speak now
talented
or forever
author?
hold your war and peace.
Oh, that's what I remembered in this movie about superheroes. There's a person called Warren Peace, and
Yeah, we
his
already talked about this.
Yeah.
That's a bit on the nose. I don't know what that means.
You know, like
Don't
you're
say
testing
it.
milk and you're like, it's a bit on
It
the
smells bad. I think it means a bit tacky, a bit corny. Doesn't
kind
it?
of.
Is
Yeah.
that what that means?
Well, it means it smells bad.
Does it really?
No, well, in a literal sense, but you
Oh.
don't apply it literally.
All right.
Anyway, is there a question to save us from this banal
Do
conversation?
you have a favorite word in English?
Yeah.
I'm gonna chuck this in the next
I got a
episode.
few.
Of Define.
I got a few.
Obscure good words. Yep.
Syzygy is one.
Oh, yep. The alignment.
Syzygy.
Oh, you go ahead.
Be my guest. The alignment of
Fuck.
three celestial.
What did I do?
Do you want to backtrack?
Hi, Linda. Did you want to come up and participate for a little bit, or Aaron, you going to nick off? Okay. Aaron's going to come and meet you. Yeah, Aaron's going to come down. Okay. Thanks, Aaron.
Alright.
See ya.
See ya.
Thanks for
See
coming.
you later.
Hi, Linda.
Headrest.
Yeah, Aaron's coming down to meet you at the door. All right. Thanks.
Bye, Aaron.
He's like, nah.
I'm not a
I'm
serial
going.
killer.
Yeah.
Layman claws. Syzygy is
Um,
great. Syzygy is the alignment of 3 celestial bodies.
Cool.
So like 3 planets.
3 planets aligned.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wait, is that like, would that be like the lunar eclipse, like how we have the sun, the moon, and the...
Exactly,
Yes.
actually.
Yes.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Syzygy.
Gryffindor.
Yeah, it is
10
spelled
points.
SYZYGY.
Yeah, it's got a
It
cool
is a killer word to play Scrabble with. You know, 3 Ys.
Yeah, if you can get 3 Ys.
Yeah, if you can get 3 Ys.
Syzygy.
Syzygy.
Oh,
Do you know what word I made
an
in
alignment
Scrabble
of
the other
3
day?
celestial
On a
bodies.
What?
double word score, no
What?
less.
What word?
Quiz.
You made quiz.
Yeah.
That's envious, actually. Horizon's pretty
I made
good.
Horizon too, yeah.
Yeah.
Go me.
There are a bunch of other words,
Alright,
though.
Syzygy, awesome
Yeah.
word. No. Got another one?
I think one of my favourite tree names is Liquid Amber.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's
I
cool.
don't know why that's relevant, but we were talking about trees before.
Yeah,
So.
we were.
Why do you have a favourite word?
Mm.
Crapulent.
Crap.
Oh,
That's
I
his
love
favourite
that
state
word.
of being, actually.
Favorite word.
I
My
love the word crapulent. I told my teacher, I said, because she loves these, she calls like really interesting words wow words. And I said, do you want to hear a
She
wow
sounds pretty
word?
lame.
Yeah, I know.
oh, and you told her crapulent.
Yeah, I said, do you want to hear a wow word? And she said, yeah. And I said, crapulent.
What did she
And
say to that?
Crapulent. I said, do you want to know what it means? And she said, I'm not sure. And I said, it means drunk.
Well, it does.
And she
Nice.
Said, oh.
It does mean drunk. What do you got there? Oh, your
Are
words.
you crapulent?
No, I'm not.
Oh, that's actually a really, really good thing to have. You know that?
Oh, I want to
My
see.
favorite one is like inexorably.
Can I place it? Can I place it?
Inexorably is
How
awesome.
many you got in here?
Yeah.
That's
No,
it.
that's it so far. I haven't got many. There is perturb, lachrymose, crapulent, inexorably, and dissipate.
Nice.
Dissipate.
Lachrymose is a good one.
That is. Though.
Is
Yeah.
that the opposite of participate? Dissipate?
Dissipate
In a way.
is to disappear or
Oh,
make
oops.
disappear or
Sorry.
scatter.
What's your definition for inexorable?
In a way that is
Stand still.
impossible to stop or
That keeps
prevent.
happening.
Very cool. One of my favourite sayings is the Anglo-Saxon saying, "For fate is inexorable."
Well, that's
Yeah.
cool.
That is like so
Right?
true.
So
Right?
true.
Weird bith full ride is, I think, the way
Thank
you
you
say
for
it.
What did you
watching.
say?
Weird bith full ride is the way I think you say it in Anglo-Saxon.
Okay.
You can edit this bit out.
Hello.
Yeah.
Geek.
Oh, cool. My
Yeah.
favorite word. I don't know if I've got one.
Oh, this is squishy.
You don't have
No,
one?
no, it's like perfect. It is really
Uh,
okay.
No, I don't know. I like the word dink.
You like the word dink?
Yeah,
This was
not
in-
because
this
it's
was in
like
Really?
Define, wasn't it?
I just like it because it's so playful
Dink.
and it's so nostalgic.
Wait, what is a dink?
You know, on
I
a
like
bike.
dink on a bike.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's an
I
Australian
thought it was
word.
I
for
thought it was a
stuff.
noun.
You guys are so old.
I know, 40-40.
It's an Australian word, so it throws back
All
to
the best
being a
words are
kid
Australian.
in Australia,
Yeah,
riding
those are
bikes
old.
with friends.
This thing sucks. It
They-
won't
It's,
yeah,
stay.
you don't do that anymore.
Mate.
You don't do that
I don't think kids actually go outside anymore, do they?
I
A little bit,
Oh.
but not nowhere near as
No,
much.
now they come to
I
riders
do
clubs.
go outside.
Yeah.
I have like
You-
52 animals. I go outside.
You've got
Oh,
52
I
animals.
Yeah.
have one animal.
Lily lives on
which-
some kind of farm.
Oh, really? Did that one animal
Guess
eat the
how
other?
many cats I
No,
have? I
just,
dare you.
The other
12.
two
No.
were my
17.
sister's when
Huh?
she was like
17.
10.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
They
yeah.
died
Lower.
of heat.
8.
But after like a
Seven.
long
Good.
What?
9.
What?
7.
That was after a long
Number.
and we got a new one.
Huh?
6.
Yeah, okay.
Seven?
Stop.
What are you saying?
I'm trying to
Guess
guess
how
how many
many
cats.
I have?
52.
No.
10.
We used to have 52
No.
animals.
That's animals,
Okay,
not cats.
is it more than 10?
No.
Is it less than 10?
Yeah.
7.
Could have been 10.
Yes.
Oh, I got it right.
I have 7 cats. Don't tell
Wow.
me.
You're
That's
the crazy
freaking
cat lady.
And
That's
my
like
mum-
I
no.
actually heard being a crazy
56
cat lady.
lives.
No, my mum and my
I
nana.
don't think that's right.
My nana was. My mum is.
We're all
and
dropping
I
off like
will be.
flies here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Who's this?
Thank you. All right,
Thank
I'll
you
send-
for watching.
Go. Someone's
That's actually a really good mic
downstairs.
performance.
What's your dad's name?
My dad,
Yeah.
Brendan.
Brendan
His name
is
is mine.
downstairs at the door.
Thank you for watching.
I think that's a pretty good exit, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching.
Cool. Which camera are you looking at? Go to that one.
Thank you for watching.
Between the
That
boat.
one only goes on.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thank you for
Thanks
watching.
for joining us at
Thank you very
the
much.
Launchpad Rise Club. You're welcome back
I look forward to coming
anytime.
back.
I'm sure this is not the last we've seen of
Yeah, I
Robbie.
love
Feel
sitting
like
in the game. Okay, good.
Okay. Thank you for watching.
Drop the mic. Actually, don't literally drop it.
Please don't.
No, no,
Thank
can
you
drop
for
these.
watching.